We're putting together something big, and what it takes is something big. It takes a time commitment, or as we like to say, investing a lot of time with the client and the client investing a lot of time with us. But the good news is once you finish this meeting, once you've gone through this discovery meeting with the client, I can almost assure you, I don't want to say guarantee, but I can assure you that there is a extremely high probability that this prospect is probably going to hire you.
Welcome to the Advisors Fuel podcast, where high-performing financial planners and wealth advisors discover proven processes and actionable strategies to elevate their client experience, grow their businesses faster, and achieve unprecedented success. Here's your host, Adam Coach, founder at Adrenaline Advisor Consulting at adrenalineadvisor.com.
Welcome to these Advisors Fuel podcast. This is a 4-part series. This is part 2 about working with the wealthiest segment of the population, and that's business owners. The first part, if you want to check that out, go back to beginning the exit planning discussions. If you check out the first part of the series, I go into a bunch of details about how to basically start the business transition and exit planning discussion with owners and get them to the table or to the triggering event, depending on how you want to look at it. So be sure to check out that episode. This is part 2, where we move into how to do a financial plan for the owner and spouse. Most people who are in this industry, most financial advisors, already know how to do financial planning. You might be looking for ways to do it better, more efficiently. Maybe some of you don't do planning. I know I have talked to financial advisors. We actually have coached several financial advisors in Adrenaline that have never done any financial planning in their practice. So if that is you, then this is definitely going to be a great episode for you. We're going to dive into as much detail as I can today. If you want more details, of course, there's other material we have on our website. There's other videos we've done, podcasts. And of course, you can always check out the Adrenaline program if you want to get the nitty-gritty details. So let's jump into the material. This is financial planning for the owner and spouse. And one of the big things is when we're starting to go through exit planning or not, even if you're not doing exit planning with an owner, no business transition planning at all, you're just working with a business owner, whether that be you came into the relationship because you were working with their 401k plan. Maybe you came into the relationship because they were referred to you by a CPA, an attorney, maybe another client perhaps. Maybe you just met them at a networking event, or you cold called them or prospected them, and that's how you met them. But it doesn't really matter how you came to meet this owner. At some point in the conversation, whether you're doing exit planning or not, doing their financial plan is something every owner needs. In other words, as the saying goes, a dream without a plan is just a wish, and we can't just invest their money and hope they have enough money to retire someday. We not only need to keep in mind all of their fixed expenses, but their variable expenses after retirement. And of course, the biggest asset they own, which is 80% of their net worth, by the way, which is their business. We need to make that part of the financial plan as well. Let me go over with you our process at our office for how we do retirement plans for business owners. And it starts with a discovery meeting. The discovery meeting is long. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's our longest meeting that we do with any client or prospect. If it's not a business owner, non-business owner client, non-entrepreneur, these discovery meetings typically last between 2 to 2.5 hours long. We have had discovery meetings with owners that have gone as long as 4.5 hours. Now, of course, we did not do all 4.5 hours in one sitting. We split it up. But anytime we do a discovery meeting, and I get a lot of pushback on this from many financial advisors we've coached over the past couple of years. But if we're doing a standard 2 to 2.5 hour discovery meeting, we are not splitting it up. We're not sending them information in advance so they can fill it out for us. We're not trying to make this super convenient because we think that they don't want to spend time with us. The numbers, all the data, the typical things that we all gather, we're still going to gather those things. Absolutely. And we are going to gather them in person, by the way. And that's not going to happen, though, until about 2/3, if not 3/4 of the way through the discovery meeting. Most of the questions we're going to be asking are very soft questions. They're going to be questions about who they are, where they grew up. We're going to be asking them questions that formed how they think about money. We're going to ask them questions that might get a little uncomfortable at some point. Questions like, how do you feel about religion when it comes to your money? Is there a point in your life when you would like to benefit the colleges, universities, high schools that you've gone to? Things like that. So we get into a lot of questions. Some of them are hypothetical questions. Some of them have to do with their health, their longevity, their parents' longevity. So the reason this meeting is so long is because we want to ask every possible question, and probably a lot of questions that they never imagined we would ask, in order to get all the things that we need to put together a full-blown, comprehensive, fiduciary-driven retirement plan, retirement income plan, investment recommendations, tax planning, estate planning, and insurance planning recommendations for everything from their home and auto and liability coverage to their long-term care and life insurance needs analyses. We're putting together something big, and what it takes is something big. It takes a time commitment, or as we like to say, investing a lot of time with the client and the client investing a lot of time with us. But the good news is, once you finish this meeting, once you've gone through this discovery meeting with the client, I can almost assure you, I don't want to say guarantee, but I can assure you that there is a extremely high probability that this prospect is probably going to hire you. That is, if they haven't already hired you, and this is just a new process you're taking an existing client through. So this process that I'm teaching you here is not only how we work with business owner clients, but it's the same process we take our non-business owners through. And by the way, it has more than a 90% conversion ratio, extremely high conversion rate. When I tell you that it's a 2.5-hour meeting, to do it, sit down with the client, ask every question in person across the conference table. Taking notes on a laptop is what we do. You can do it by hand but we type fast, but ask these questions one by one, get to know them on an intimate level, and it is going to benefit you and it's going to benefit them more than they ever imagined. That's the discovery meeting. Once we're done with this meeting, we get into the education meeting. Now, where the discovery meeting is a lot around us peppering the client with questions. We literally say it that way when we're talking to them on our intro calls, by the way. But we're peppering them with tons and tons of questions. They are doing most of the talking, and when they're done, they're probably going to need a drink. But the education meeting is different. We're flipping the script, we're turning the tables around, and instead it's us teaching them things. We're teaching them about how we're structured as a firm. We're teaching them investments 101 and treating them like a fifth grader. We're going to go over things like stocks, bonds. We're going to go over ETFs, mutual funds, the difference between those things from a high level, 30,000 foot view level. If you use model portfolios, SMAs, any sort of unique portfolio instruments that you want to explain to them, this is when you would do that. And at the end of this meeting, we do a risk assessment. We don't call it a risk quiz. We call it an assessment. And we always tell them, look, we're not going to use this risk assessment to determine how we invest your money. Instead, that's what the financial plan output is for. Once we do your financial plan and we know what it says on the other end, we'll know how aggressive you need to be. But what this assessment tells us is how aggressive you want to be. And in a perfect world, we want what you need and what you want to marry. But sometimes, every once in a while, we'll have a client who is extremely conservative, but their financial plan output says they need to be more aggressive. In that case, we've got to do some more educating. We've got to talk about increasing savings, decreasing expenses, either before or after retirement, maybe prolonging retirement to a later date. Those are the discussions we need to have. Obviously, being more aggressive is another option, but usually that's not what's on the table if it doesn't want to take risk, right? On the other hand, we run into people who they have a very high risk tolerance, but their financial plan says they don't need to take a lot of risk. These situations are obviously a whole lot easier, and oftentimes the most that we end up doing is taking things like that and saying, okay, let's be relatively moderate with the majority of your portfolio, but if you'd like to take a portion of it and be aggressive with it, that's fine. We can always take a small portion of their portfolio and be more aggressive, just, I don't want to say for fun, but for fun. So that's what the risk assessments are for. That's how we determine what a client wants versus what they need. And speaking of what they need, that's when we get into the financial planning meeting. Financial planning meeting is about 90 minutes long, usually less, whereas the education meeting is 60 minutes long. I didn't mention that. But in the financial planning meeting, we're taking everything we've learned about the client in the first two meetings. We're putting everything into a financial planning software. I know you probably have your own. We use Money Guide Pro, but there's lots of great software out there. eMoney, obviously Money Guide Pro is what we use. Money Tree, Navaplan. I don't want to say they're all the same. They're all different, obviously, but all of them work. They all do generally the same thing to a certain extent. So whatever financial planning software you're using, or if you don't have it, obviously do some research, find what works for you. The big 800-pound gorillas in the room are typically eMoney and Money Guide. Check both of those out for sure. But once you get the financial plan inputs from your discovery meeting, everything from your risk assessment and anything you learned in that education meeting about the client into the plan, now we're going to do a cash flow analysis. We want to find out, are they on track to getting to retirement on time? Or as I like to say, are they on track to making work optional? If they're not, what levers do we need to pull? There's usually, like in Money Guide Pro, there's a play zone where you can change the numbers, change retirement date, change expenses, and you can see what needs to change in order to make things work. In the case the financial plan's good, one of the things I like to do is break the plan on purpose. I'll literally tell the prospect, look, okay, your financial plan looks great. Now let's break it. Let's see how far can we go in terms of pushing the guardrails to the point where they're almost going to snap. And we start playing with the numbers, increasing expenses, maybe making the retirement date earlier, let's just say. We're doing all these different types of stress tests. When we're done, Then we get into ancillary advice using a PowerPoint presentation where we're going in and saying, okay, here are income planning recommendations we might make for somebody who's close to retirement or already retired. We might go into some tax planning recommendations, whether that's Roth conversions, if it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for a lot of clients, but if it makes sense, we might have recommendations in terms of introducing them to a CPA. If they don't like their current tax professional, they don't have one, or maybe they just want a second opinion. Oftentimes that's what it is. There might be estate planning recommendations we're making. Oftentimes, more than half of our clients actually don't have an estate plan or it's too old. Oftentimes we're introducing them to an attorney and we're helping them to get their estate plan in place before we get into something we call the safe haven kit. And I'll get into that in a second. But after estate planning recommendations, we're getting into insurance planning recommendations. We've done a life insurance needs analysis for both spouses. We're obviously taking into account income replacement, the business. We're looking at the business as an asset, a hard asset in the financial plan, when it's going to be sold. We always want to be very conservative about what the business is worth. The owner isn't always going to like it, by the way, but oftentimes whenever the owner says how much their business is worth, they're usually wrong, and they're usually wrong to the top side. So usually it's worth less than what they think it is. That doesn't mean that we can't use exit planning, business transition planning to help make that business worth more, but that's a discussion for the other parts of this 4-part episode that I'm doing here. You can catch that on episode 1 and then episodes 3 and 4 in this 4-part series. Anyway, back to the financial planning meeting. We've done estate planning, tax planning, insurance, life needs analyses. You get into long-term care at this point, home and auto insurance coverage, liability umbrellas. You're looking at all areas of their insurance picture as well, just to make sure that they're covered and everything's taken care of. Because obviously, if you don't have a proper insurance and something happens on the insurance front, all of a sudden the whole plan blows up. So it's really important. I'm not a big insurance salesperson. I don't really like insurance, to be honest with you, but it's one of those necessary evils, obviously, right? So that's the financial planning meeting. And at the end, we have what we call a 6-week follow-up meeting. The 6-week follow-up meeting is typically meant just to keep the momentum going. We want to make sure that any introductions we've made to other professionals like CPAs, insurance agents, attorneys, that they're continuing that momentum, that they're doing it, setting up the meeting, and taking the next steps to get those things done that we need them to get done. This is all organized using what we call an action item sheet. A, we don't forget about things we've talked about with them in the past, and B, because we want to make sure that they have the action item sheets, they know what their homework is. And there's always homework. Every review meeting, there's always homework at every meeting. Speaking of review meetings, this is where typically we would tell our owner clients and non-owner clients technically that we reach out to our clients to set up annual review meetings in January. And then we set up semi-annual review meetings in March and September. We always tell them, look, you can reach out to us at any time. It can be June, it can be November, it doesn't make a difference. But we do this in this way to stay organized, and we do what we call RPMs, rapid power meetings. You might have heard of them called surge meetings, which is basically just setting up meetings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, or just Tuesdays and Thursdays, back to back to back, to stay super efficient. You have bigger time blocks to get deep work done and really get things done, to eat that frog, if you haven't heard of that book. 6-week follow-up meeting. The last piece of the pie here is something called the Safe Haven Kit. Now, this is something that's really near and dear to my heart. This all came about from an old mentor I had who's no longer in the business anymore. He worked for Franklin Templeton, national sales director, spoke directly to Sir John Templeton. He eventually became a top 40 speaker in the country, and we created this thing called a Safe Haven Kit, which basically is a way to get your client's financial house in order. It starts with a checklist where they get you a bunch of things that you need. They provide you with these items, things like their will, powers of attorney, healthcare directive, if they have a trust. From there, we get into a password organizer, which needs to be updated, obviously, occasionally, a place to put their passports. We take their bank statements, credit union statements, anything having to do with CDs, brokerage statements, insurance policies. Everything in their financial life goes into this kit. We get them a fireproof safe from Amazon, just have it drop shipped, and we fill this kit up. If they're in town, we hand deliver it to them. If they're not in town, we just ship them the safe, and we help them build this kit for themselves, because obviously we don't need really sensitive documents with PII flying around, even if it is FedEx or UPS, at least unnecessarily, right? I know sometimes we do send things that way. We all do it for necessary reasons, but this is an added bonus. We want to try to avoid anything getting lost in the mail, obviously. So once the kit is built, we upload everything to we call it the Safe Haven Vault. It's an online encrypted site. Some of you who use eMoney, you already have a vault. There's other financial planning software that has a vault embedded. If you have that, just use that. There's no need to do anything else. We use a company called Your eFolio, yourEfolio.com. and we white labeled it to our company, to Libertas. Everything in this safe haven kit is uploaded online, encrypted, available anytime they need it. And then when we're done with this kit, we have their executor or their trustee get limited access. So we have a Zoom call. Typically, we set them up with limited access with a username and password. And when they log in, all they see is client name 1, client name 2, address, phone, email. That's it. Because obviously we don't want any personal information being shared at this time. But we explained to them that should something happen, heaven forbid, and Jane and John are happily married, but then John gets in a car accident and I get a phone call from the executor and we hear, I've got terrible news. We lost John. We don't know what to do. We need your help. All we do is we flip the switch in the safe haven vault, and now the executor or trustee has access to everything they need to help administer the estate at a time when the last thing the bride or the surviving groom wants to worry about is money, right? So that's the safe haven kit. This is pretty much from top to bottom. I know there's a lot more details that I didn't have time for, but from top to bottom, that's our financial planning process for the owner and spouse. It's also very similar to the financial planning process that we go through for non-business owners. Please keep that in mind. And before I let you go, I just want to remind you of the story of how Adrenaline got started. My good friend Leo Nicotera, who I'd known for 14 years at the time, reaches out on a Tuesday night at about 7:30. He wanted to know how things were going. I told him things were going awesome. We were having another record year. He asks me, how are you having a record year? And I said, look, there's no one thing we're doing. There's lots of things we're doing. And he says, okay, give me your top 3. And I said, look, I can't give you my top 3 because that would be like giving you the receiver, the quarterback, and a running back against a team of 11 on the other side of the ball. It takes blockers, it takes coaches, it takes a lot of different things to make marketing work and to grow your practice and do it the right way and get to a point of scaling where you're not worried about where your next lead's going to come from. So basically what ended up happening is he asked me if I would help install our practice. In other words, he wanted to know if I would teach him and his team how we do everything we do at our office from the second we show up to the second we go home every day. And so I did that. And over the course of the following 14 weeks and 27 hours of Zoom calls, I taught him literally how to run my business and his practice. They brought in $7 million of new assets just in that 14 weeks. In 2024, they grew at 41%, which blew my mind. And in 2025, they grew at 20%, which is still great. Obviously, it's really hard to keep a clip up of 40% and higher. That's really hard to do, but he continues to grow. He's having a lot of fun. And that's probably the best part of all this is not so much the money. It's the fact that he was in a terrible place. He was feeling depressed. He couldn't stand the business anymore, wanted to get out. And now he's reinvigorated, having a ton of fun. They're hiring and he's doing really well. So that's where Adrenaline came from. It was a passion project that because I helped Leo, I decided to turn it into a company, basically giving away all of our secrets and teaching people how we grew our 7-figure firms. If you have interest, head over to adrenalineadvisor.com, click on the button to see if we're a good fit, check out our on-demand webinar, check out the Safe Haven Kit videos, anything you want to find online. And then of course, worst case scenario, if you're not ready yet, if this isn't something it's just not for you, check out Talking Points. I write a newsletter every Monday morning. It goes out at 9:30 in the morning to currently going out to 16,000 financial advisors every morning, Monday morning. If you'd like to be part of that growth-oriented group, please sign up. It's really cool stuff. It's basically 2 stats, 2 facts, 2 quotes, and then something else interesting. And when the market's going sideways, I always put my analyst hat on and I throw out a bunch of talking points on basically how to talk to your clients when times get tough. So that's Adrenaline. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you if you have any questions at all. We have Q&A calls at least once a month if you'd like to jump on a Q&A call and learn more about the program. Otherwise, I hope you got something out of this episode and stay tuned for part 3.
Thank you for tuning in to the Advisors Fuel podcast. For more articles, videos, and resources, or to schedule an intro call, visit adrenalineadvisor.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for financial or legal advice. Always talk to your compliance department before implementing any of the ideas shared in this episode.